Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 367. 4 Animal Games.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation is brought to you by GameToppersLLC.com. If you're a good person, you're eagerly awaiting Kickstarter 3.0 Game Toppers. Whole slew of new mats that are just gorgeous. I think my favorite is the Cthulhu one. You can take the tables from 2.0 and up and just make them their own tables so they don't even have to go on an existing table, which is huge. Kevin is just doing an amazing job. Looking forward to this Kickstarter with everybody else.
Plus Mother's Day and Father's Day is coming up. There's a gift idea for you.
My mother would absolutely love me if I got her Game Toppers.
Well, you can just etch your name on it and say, Mom, if you don't like it, I know somebody who would.
That's good, because I haven't done that with the rest of my gifts. I should try that next time. Buy something I would enjoy. If you don't like it, I guess I'll take it off your hands.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday. I am Nathan Howard.
I am Dave Holliday.
And I am Logan Howard.
This week we evolved from animal games. I guess maybe we de-evolved from animal games because we talked about a whole bunch last week. We're only going to talk about 4 this week. Well, we'll see if we only talk about 4. Others might sneak in there, but we're going to focus on 4 animal games. Each of us are going to take an animal game that we enjoy, expand on it. For my game, I chose Bunny Kingdom. This is a game that I actually put on my 10 for 10 this year. Still slacking in my plays, but this is a game that my wife really enjoys and I really enjoy, which is probably why I put it on my 10 for 10. 2 to 4 player game designed by Richard Garfield. It plays in about 40 to 60 minutes. It's a game that's based purely on mathematics. The description of the game is, peace has come at last to the Bunny Kingdom. Lead your clan of rabbits to glory by gathering resources and building new cities across the lands. This is a card drafting game. You have a hand of 10 cards. You're going to draft 2 of those cards. After you've drafted those 2 cards, then you're going to play those 2 cards down. And these cards have a variety of effects on them. Some of them will have locations on it. It's a 10 by 10 grid. You're going to put one of your bunnies into that grid location. What happens when you put your bunny there, that bunny has now created a fiefdom, will then have the opportunity to start collecting points. And the way you collect points is in your fiefdom, if you have a castle that has a spire on it, and also in that same fiefdom, if you have a resource. Printed on the board are 3 resources. There's wood, fish, and carrots. If you have one of these resources, then you will times the number of unique resources to the number of spires that you have in your fiefdom. You can have 3 different types of castles. A castle that has the single spire, double spire, and then has a triple spire. You will times your unique resources in that fiefdom times the number of spires that you have, and that's how many points that you will score for that fiefdom. When you get to the scoring, look at each of your fiefdoms, combine that score to give you your total score. That is an example of one of the cards, a grid location that you can put your bunny on. Some of the other cards would include a castle with a single spire, double spire, or a triple spire. There are treasure cards that will give you victory points. There are parchment cards that will give points based on differing factors. For example, the number of your bunnies that you have along the edge, or score points for the number of fish resources in territories that you've claimed. Some of these will give you camps that will allow you to temporarily, it could be permanent, but will allow you to temporarily occupy a grid location. However, if somebody else gets that grid location throughout the game, they'll just kick you out and take over that space. But for a couple rounds, you might be able to take advantage of that. Hopefully, you might have the opportunity to draft that card in a later round, so then you don't have to worry about replacing that card. Different cards will allow you to score points. I really enjoy the game. I enjoy the drafting of it. Playing it 2 players is a little bit different. I'm not going to really get into that, but the way you draft is very different in a 2-player game compared to a 3 or 4-player game. Going back to the drafting, there are rare resources that you can also add to your fiefdoms. So you can go from 3, 4, 5, 6 resources that you're then timesing to hopefully is a larger number of spires in your fiefdom, so that number will grow. And so some of these scores easily get into the 200s, sometimes even into the 300s, depending on how well you're able to expand your fiefdom or combine your fiefdom with an existing fiefdom. Great game, very simple, ton of fun. I highly recommend this game. And then there's an expansion that is called Bunny Kingdom in the Sky, which will expand the board to the clouds. Bunnies are nice and fluffy. They get to float on clouds. You can take these rainbow bridges up to the clouds, be able to expand your fiefdom opportunities in the sky. It introduces extra resources, takes it up to 5 players, which is great, and best of all, it introduces purple bunnies.
Ooh, I don't know if that was best.
Purple bunnies are awesome. But that's Bunny Kingdom. Great with the expansion, great without the expansion. Plays well with 2 players. I find it far more enjoyable to play with more players. Find that your fiefdoms are able to grow. There's more area control competition. Not necessarily that it's area control, but you're competing for territory.
Yeah, specific territory trying to get resources.
It does become an area control when 2 people are trying to expand their fiefdom into the same area. Great game, though. I highly recommend it. And that's Bunny Kingdom.
Bunny Kingdom.
Maybe we should just go into the theme song business.
if all the theme song people want is just their name, kind of sing-song, but not super well, just kind of done, would have totally rocked it.
Indeed.
The game I chose to talk about is a game we played a couple months ago. It was Logan's first experience with this game.
Very long.
Great experience.
Very long.
It may have been a little bit of a long game and had a terraforming Mars feel to him. Nonetheless, I think it's a great game.
I think it's a great game, just to the point that I would pass, and then Dave would still have 45 minutes.
Not just Dave.
It was mostly Dave. It's within the charming valley of Everdell, beneath the boughs of towering trees, among the meandering streams and mossy hollows, a civilization of forest critters is thriving and expanding. From Everfrost to Bellsong, many a year have come and gone, but the time has come for new territories to be settled and new cities established. You will be the leader of a group of critters intent on such a task. There are buildings to construct, lively characters to meet, even to host. You have a busy year ahead of yourself. Will the sun shine brightest on your city before the winter moon rises? Everdell is a tableau building game, resource management, hand management, worker placement aspects to it. My first game of this, it was very similar to Logan's game, but luckily it was everybody's first game. But you only have 2 workers in the first season. The first round typically goes quickly, and it seems kind of difficult to get resources. My second play is a lot smoother, and I had resources to spend in the first season. Play it through the year, you're going to add workers as you go throughout the game. When you finish a season, there's going to be an end-of-season benefit, whether it's you gain a worker and you're going to produce on all of your production buildings. 4 different types of buildings and critters. With the green symbol, those are green production buildings. There's a red symbol with a paw print. Those are red destinations. Those are areas that you can place a worker on. There are blue cards, which are blue governance buildings and critters. Those typically grant you bonuses after playing certain types of cards. When you play a critter, you're going to gain this benefit, or when you build a construction, you're going to gain this benefit. There's purple prosperity cards, which are essentially focused on getting victory points. Finally, there's the Tan Traveler cards, which are one-time benefits. When you play the card, you gain a benefit on the card, and then it's just a card in your tableau. There's just a lot of aspects about this game I love. Everybody plays basically a type of critter, and you have your leader card, which gives you an asymmetrical power. For example, if I'm the squirrels, then whenever I produce wood, anytime I gain at least 1 wood, I gain an additional wood. Whenever I'm building a construction, I can put in 2 wood to replace any 1 resource. Every single type of animal, with your leader card, you have an asymmetrical power that you get to use during the game. The powers are broad, really not similar at all.
Right.
But I thought they did a good job balancing out the powers. So you're trying to gain resources to be able to play cards, because each card costs resources. The resources are twigs, resin, pebbles, and berries. Typically, berries are used to play critters. You're going to use your wood, your pebbles, and your resin to construct buildings. such a wide variety of cards that have a hand of cards, max of 8 cards, plus you have cards in the meadow that everybody can build and play cards from the meadow. The board itself is really cool. There's actually a 3-dimensional tree that you build to put the game together, and you have gold cards on this tree, along with the different seasons and your new critters that you're going to add to your worker pool at the end of every season. The board is just a gorgeous board. There's quite a few expansions to this, and every expansion hooks to a different side of the board. It's very, very cool how they've done this. So you're going to play through the year. So once you pass, then everybody else is going to finish out that year. And unfortunately, you have to wait, which is what Logan ran into. He passed early and had to wait for everybody to finish their turns. Once everybody's passed, then you start the next season. Once you get through the year, you just count up points, and whoever has the most points wins. Super fun game. We need to play it again with Logan, so that he's not a hater of Everdell.
Need to play it with me, too.
We need to play it with Nathan, too.
Yeah, so I can beat Nathan. When we played it, it was my first time, David's wife's first time, and Richie's wife's first time. 3 of our scores were in the same range. And then the 3 people that had played the game before were in their own league.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a good game. It's just there's a lot there, a lot to digest.
Getting resources, which are super important in the game.
It's essential, yeah.
It's different than a lot of resource management games in the way that you go about doing it and when and how. Having played it through, it helps you realize that next time you play it.
So a typical resource worker placement game, you put a worker on a location, which is the case here as well. You put a worker on a location and you're going to gain resources based on whatever location you place that worker, which is the case in this game. But also you have your green production cards, and when you play a green production card, you immediately gain whatever resources that card produces. Even though I may have placed all my workers, if I have green production cards in my hand that I can afford, I can keep playing. Those give me more resources that will allow me to still afford to play more green production buildings or any other buildings in my hand. I can keep playing. Just because you've run out of workers, if you can still play a card on your turn, then you don't need to pass. And I think that was the biggest difference, kind of wrapping your head around how in the world do we get resources. I got asked that question quite a few times. How do you have so many resources? It's placing your workers in a way that's strategic enough to where you can play as many cards from your hand as possible on your turn.
And it's not just because you're like Dave sitting next to the resources.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the experience comes into hand, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Yeah. But I agree, though. I think this is a fantastic game. I think we've just played it twice, but it definitely deserves more play. It made a huge difference going from game 1 to game 2. It's just a very enjoyable game. Again, like you talked about, the visuals of it are really cool. Thematically, it's really cool. It's not wood, it's twig.
Because they're little animals.
Right.
Yeah.
Really good game. It really is. There's a lot of variation with all the cards. A ton of different ways you can produce.
Lots of ways to get
bonuses and ways of, I'm going to make this work with this and this. I can actually use Logan's card over there for this. And just a lot of variability in it. They did a really good job with it.
The other thing I enjoyed with this are the expansions. The expansions make each game play so different. Spire Crest expansion was in the large critters that your 3D pieces have a little saddle and you attach your small critter to the large critter.
That's a nice touch.
There's the Pearl Brook. You're moving your frog along. You're getting pearls. Play with one expansion, you play with another expansion, it changes the game, which I love. Add an extra layer of variability when you want to play it, but maybe we've already played this expansion, we'll play a different expansion, completely different game.
We haven't used the large critters, have we?
I have. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't played that one yet.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Play it with Nate.
And they actually had a Kickstarter last month that has 2 new expansions.
The New Leaf and the Mistwood.
Correct. And they look awesome.
Yeah, you talk about expansions. There's a lot of expansions.
There are.
Pearlbrook, Legends, Extra, Belfair.
And not all of them are big expansions. Like Legends is just a deck of cards. Everybody get a legendary critter and a legendary construction that's on top of the normal cards you start with. And they don't count towards your hand size. Your legendary construction and your legendary critter are going to be pretty powerful cards. My legendary critter that I had in the last game was amazing for me, but they typically tend to be a little bit more expensive. That was one of my favorite expansions, actually. It was one of the smallest ones, because it was just a small deck of cards. But they've done really well, in my opinion, really well on their expansions. That's Everdell. Fun game.
My game is Sewer Pirates. Andres Pelican Game is the designer, publisher, Fantasy Flight. The whole premise is that you're playing these different sewer creatures traveling through the sewer to collect trash. That's your treasure. It sounds really weird, but I really enjoy the game. Play different critters that have different powers. There's 3 different boats, and they have, referred to them as talismans, that you use to get better on the particular ship. They have the fish, they have the cat, and the bird. And if you have those talismans when you put your critter out there, it puts you on position on the boat. Each boat has spots 1, 2, and 3. It only costs 1 card to go up to spot 1. It costs 2 cards to go to spot 2 and 3 cards to go up to spot 3. And then there's a last spot, that's the captain spot, in which if you're on the captain spot, then your next action must be to launch a ship. I think this is where the game shines because it's the most thematic to me, collecting the loot. Adorable trash, I guess I want to say.
Adorable trash. All right.
Yes. My favorite thing about it, if you're the captain, you get a special round token, and then there's a random collection of other stuff. All the round tokens give you benefits to the other trash. If you have a talking parrot, you can ransom either teddy bears back to the little boys or the dollies to the little girls. You get to choose one or the other. You would need 2 of those talking parrots to get bonuses from the teddy bears or the dolls. They have can openers to open all the canned food, which is, I guess, least thematic to me.
That's like the ultimate treasure, though.
It's the ultimate treasure,
Get
but
a
it's like the
can of food.
The least thematic because it's actual food, right? It's probably still good.
Well, there's tons of food that goes down the sewers.
You can get French fries, and if you get ketchup, everything of French fries you get is worth 5 additional victory points. Then they have hot peppers, which go with your old Chinese food. And then they have an old milkshake that you can get with your hamburgers that make those worth more points.
I like this.
It's really kind of cool.
The different critters, they all have different abilities about being placed on the ship. There's the snail, which it seems like a weird ability to me for a snail.
I agree. It is a weird ability for a snail.
So you put the snail out there, and then you flip the top card of the deck, and if the talisman that's revealed matches your boat, you get to move an additional spot. If you're lucky, you get a free movement towards the captain's ship. The rat, you get to pick 2 treasures instead of just 1, so the people behind you on the boat, if there's nothing left, they don't get anything. The weasel gets you an additional movement if you have the cards to pay for it. The roaches, you pay 1 fewer card for what you want to do. So instead of paying 2 cards to move 2 spaces, you can just pay 1. The toads, after the ship sets sail, they can choose to stay on the ship. If you were further down the ship and you didn't get anything, or there wasn't anything that you really wanted to combine together, you can stay on the ship to try and get the treasure that's better for you on the other side.
The toads can be useful. For example, cans are worthless at the end of the game unless you have a can opener. So if I only have 1 can opener and I already have a can, or I don't have any can openers, and I don't want that can, and it's the last tile, then I can stay on the ship. That can will go to the person that's further back from me, and then my toad will move up and be in a better position for what's next.
It also helps that the next treasure that we're going to go out to search for, it's revealed, so you have like an eye on the future.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, is this can worth it? You can get the cans and then hopefully get the can openers later in the game. The cans are worth the most victory points.
They are, yes.
Raccoons, they get paid when people move over them. So like when...
So like they get run over? Is that what it is?
So it's kind of like leapfrog. So like if you put out your figure and you're on spot 3, and then somebody moves over you, they pay to go past you.
Okay.
They have to pay you that card.
Like Logan said, if you place on the number 1 spot on the ship, it costs you 1. If you want to play on the number 2 and there's nobody in the number 1 spot, it costs you 2. But if there's somebody in the number 1 spot already, you pay for the next open space. So you don't pay anything to go to the number 2. It only costs you 1 card. But if the raccoon's there, it's going to cost you 2 cards. Anytime you move over a raccoon to the next available space, you have to pay the owner of the raccoon 1 card that matches that boat. The raccoon can really gum things up a little bit. I want to make sure I'm going to be able to become captain. Anybody who's going to try to come in and take that away from me, I'm going to throw my raccoon on there, so they have to pay an extra card.
Getting cards is so key in this game. We played earlier just to kind of refresh. It was your first time, right, David?
Yeah, it was.
Having the right cards for the right ships made all the difference. If you just have critters on the ship, chances are you can get a piece of loot, but if you're never the captain, you never get the additional things. I ended the game with 3 can openers and 3 cans. I got so many points from that.
Being captain and getting that extra bonus really just makes everything that you've already gained better. You can score so many points, especially if you specialize, or in your case, you got so many cans, and if someone gets that many can openers, it's going to be hard to beat them.
They have to have the cans too, but still, right?
But cans there's quite a few cans. There are the most points.
One thing to realize, I didn't realize this until halfway through the game, those bonus tiles that you only get if you're captain, those are the only place to get any of the tiles that activate the other stuff, right?
Yes.
So the only place to get the ketchup is on a bonus tile. The only place to get a can opener on a bonus tile. The only place to get a parrot is on the bonus tile. That just makes being captain huge.
It really does.
Right? Because without that, yeah, you can get some points, but one bonus piece can be worth 25 points based on what it does. Logan, you got ketchup because you had a lot of fries, and that just made each of them worth an additional 5 points. That one ketchup tile was like 25 points for you.
The benefit to there's 2 ketchup tiles in the game, and if you get both of them, that means each French fry you have is worth 10 additional points.
That could be huge.
It really can be.
The game ends when there's no more tiles to put out. You know very well when the game's ending. And so I was watching for that second ketchup packet the entire game, and it got put out the second to last boat. So I could have tried to be the captain, but it was just placement. I was able to jump to the head of the captain and get another can opener in a high point can and score 3 less points than to get the ketchup packet. It was better for me to end the game and go with 3 less points than to try and struggle to get the other ketchup packet.
It was better for all of us for you to end the game.
Did it feel like Everdell, Dave?
No.
Did it feel like Great Western Trail? Oh no, he didn't destroy us. I really enjoy this game. It's a little hard to remember what each little critter does, and it's not all the critters every single game. It's randomized. You only play with 4 of them at a time. Once you understand what each of them do, it's fairly simple. I love the theme of it. I love getting the parrot to ransom back the little girl's dollies. It makes me giggle. I like the... I don't know, I just love collecting the little random pieces of trash. The old milkshake to make the hamburgers better. Yeah.
You should see his bedroom.
I have only received 1 ransom so far, so the rest have just piled up.
The talismans are little Jolly Rogers, like little skull and crossbones, a bird skull and crossbones, and the cat skull and crossbones, and then you have the fish skeleton. I agree. Thematically, such a cool game. And I loved the different abilities and how all of them blend so nicely together of all the critters.
It's so simple, has just enough complication to make it interesting. Nathan can't wait for you to play this game.
I'm excited. It sounds like it's going to be tons of fun.
It's not that great.
He'll change his tune once he wins.
Dave doesn't like games that he doesn't win.
Can't win them all, Dave.
Whatever. No, it was decent. I'll play it again. I'll probably like it more. Just because I'll probably feel like I can figure out what I'm doing a little bit.
I won this game that we played because I got so incredibly lucky with all of my placements and the cards that I drew. That's really what it is. If you have the right cards as you need to play them, it's like Andy said when we were playing, it felt like I never ran out of cards.
Yeah.
Plus, the game was facing us and not Dave, so that's probably also why he hated the game.
Yep.
How did you manage that?
He set it up that way.
It was set up for Logan.
All right.
It was because I was wearing the birthday crown.
And I was like, do this. I can do this.
That's why you hated the game.
Last game. Agricola.
Is it Swedish?
Does it help your sore throats?
Definitely. Agricola is an amazing game. When I was building my top 5, it was in there for a minute, and then it got edged out. I think it finished up at like 6 or 7 on my list.
Is this what we're going to hear for like the next 6 months?
Probably.
This
was
game
on
was
my
near the top of my top 5.
In Agricola, you're a farmer. You live in a wooden shack with your spouse and little else.
And little what?
Elves?
Little else.
Oh, okay.
On your turn, you place yourself and your spouse. You start off with those 2, and each turn you get to place one of them. First round of the game, everybody gets 2 actions. When you send your worker out during the working phase, you're either going to gain wood, clay, or stone, or reed, or food. Those are the resources you can gain. There's also some animals that you can gain as the game progresses. And it also depends on the number of players in the game. Depending upon the number of players playing, it sets up completely different. You have the workspaces are very different and offer different bonuses.
The initial ones, right?
Yes, absolutely. The initial spaces that you can go to. Obviously a worker placement game, but it also has a bunch of other mechanisms that I love. As you go along, you can get more workers. You can have children and send them out to work. The max you can get up to there is 5 workers. As the game progresses and you think, gosh, I'd really like to do more actions. At the beginning of each round, as you're setting up the board, you're replacing the resources that were taken. Also, if a spot didn't get taken, so say there's a spot with 3 wood and it didn't get taken the previous round, well, it gets 3 more wood on it, so it now becomes more enticing because you can get 6 wood by going there. But each round, you also flip over the round card for the upcoming round. That's always an additional place for placement. Sometimes they're resources, sometimes it's plow a field and do something else. One of the things that I love about this game is the variety of ways of scoring points, the variety of ways of building a strategy. Each player has a player board in front of them that has a 3x4 grid on it that is your farm. You can build fences so that you can hold animals. In order to add work to have offspring, you have to have room for them, so you have to expand your wooden hut to be large enough, and each additional room can house 1 additional person, worker. You can also get points by upgrading from a wooden hut to a clay hut, and then from a clay hut to a stone house. In order to do all of these things, where a lot of the strategy comes in is there are a lot of cards that come with the game. And of course, with me, any game that has cards, I'm always like, ooh, more cards. I need more cards. Now this, unfortunately,
that's all Dave needs is more decisions to make.
This is not a game where I can gain extra cards, really, fortunately.
But it's still a game that you're obsessed with the cards.
It is. The different types of cards are occupation cards, and they can help you form your strategy because they can provide a lot of different bonuses or ideas of, this might make it easier for me to get a lot more animals. The thing that I love about this, though, is there are an insane amount of cards. I think the base game came with 160 occupations and 140 minor improvements. Minor improvements are things like plows, corn scoops, there's fishing nets, there's all sorts of things that, again, will improve your ability to gain resources or to store things better. At the end of a lot of the rounds, you have a harvest phase where you have to harvest your goods, your animals will breed, but the big thing is you have to feed your family. Don't feed your family, you get a begging card. Begging card is worth -3 points. You get one of these begging cards for each food that you are short. Again, one of the things that I love about this game is you can suffer those penalties and still do a good job in the game. You can still have a very effective game and win. I've won several games where I've had a lot of begging cards. So many cards that you have the possibility of having. Everybody starts the game with 7 occupations and 7 of the minor improvements. And there's just so many different ones in there that give you a new experience, something new to do in this game, a new strategy, a twist that you can try to make work and be awesome for you. They have had tons of expansions for this game as well. They've done a lot of things, added more cards. The stack of cards in the game with all the expansions it's unreal. The Farmers of the Moor expansion is actually one that I think I've only played once or twice, but I love it. It adds new animal to the game. It adds horses. In the base game, you have sheep and boar and cattle. This one adds horses. You also have to heat your home in this where your family members can become ill. It adds some cool stuff. Final scoring is a bit complicated. For a lot of people, they really find it complicated. You get negative points for any empty spaces on your grid that you didn't fill up. You get points based on the number of different things that you have. For example, vegetables, you get 4 points if you have 4 or more vegetables. 4 points is the most that you can get in any one category, except for bonus points and points on cards. Grain, for example, is the other thing that you grow. To get the most points, it's 9 or more. With 9 grain, you can get 4 points. 4 vegetables, you can get 4 points. One of the things in this game, it really pays off generally to diversify and to make sure you're doing a little bit of everything, which I kind of like. It fits the theme of a good farm. If you just focus on one thing, you might have some troubles. I tend to get, like as Andy alluding to, I tend to get a little blinded by cards.
By the variety of the selection of the cards, I can't imagine you getting
What?
stuck on something like that.
The worst thing to do a draft where you draft all the minor improvements and all of the occupations with Dave because you won't play for 4 months.
We always draft. We draft this every time we play it. Where we deal 7 cards and just draft like normal, right? But we decided a couple of times we were going to draft from every card in the game. So everybody gets to go through all of the cards, 300 cards, pick the one that I want. Boom, I've drafted that card. Next person's turn.
Wait. How many times did you go through those 300 cards each time you picked a card?
I can't even begin.
Is this the same thing like with Descent, where it took us 3 days for us just to pick cards?
When we were drafting like that, it took us months. But it wasn't just me that took forever. It was a text thing. Okay, I picked this, next person's turn. It took forever. And then we never ended up playing it either. That was the
After
best
all
part.
that? That's terrible.
I don't remember what happened. Was it right before I moved to Washington?
It may have been.
Anyway, we never ended up getting to play it. But I want to do it again. And it'll be awesome because... So we did a miniature version of it. I can't remember exactly how it worked out, but we drafted somewhat the same thing, and we did play that. Richie destroyed us with a strategy that none of us had even considered, but he's like, I wonder if I can do it with this. And he just took the trash out of us. Such a good game that has so many different avenues to build a great farm and score a ton of points. It's one of my favorites. I remember the very first time I played it over here, immediately I went home to Dennis and I was like, oh my gosh, what was that game we played? That thing was so awesome. I don't think I've ever been more excited about a game than I was when we played that the first time.
It's a really good game. Not one that we played it once last year. It had been way too long since I had played it. It was all lost on me because I couldn't remember it had been so long. It is a really good game. An Uwe Rosenberg game. I really enjoyed this game.
It's a game that you never feel like you got everything accomplished.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Those kind of engine building games where I'm about ready to get it going and the game's over.
The way this game shines, I think, is the competition for spaces, especially late in the game, when so many people really need to do the same things. You really are fighting for specific spaces. Now, there's some spaces that are similar to the starting spaces, but they are just a little bit better. There's one where you get to plow field and sow at the same time. So much better than just plowing or sowing. We get later in that game and someone will take your spots like, now I can't do what I had planned.
Like towards the beginning, it's not really that important who picks first player, but towards the end, it's really important who picks first player.
I have learned one thing based on our game of Caverna that we played a few months ago, is I need to always sit next to my daughter.
Yes.
to the left of
To the left of my daughter, because she always takes starting player.
Yeah.
I think the only time that she didn't take it is I actually took it because I wanted an action. I should just take this.
Well, that is 4 different games. We talked quite a bit about these games. Apparently, we each enjoyed them. Dave talked a lot longer because...
It's Dave.
It's Dave. You should always expect Dave to talk longer.
If he picks longer for his cards, he gets to talk longer too.
A great look at 4 different animal-themed games.
Until next time.
We'll see you picking your own animal game.